The next case is the case of extrapolated prediction. This is Dr. Lei Nei. He recently moved from the company Phase 3 Trials, Inc. to work on early development trials as a statistician at Extrapolations X. Dr. Nei presented a statistical analysis plan to the CEO, and he was deeply humiliated when his Pharmacometrics colleagues suggested that Dr. Nei's work was not only not necessary, but that there was no need to do the study at all. He is asking for $400,000 in damages. This is Dr. Chao Liu. He claims the study wasn't necessary. He claims the study wasn't necessary because the outcomes could be predicted based on data that is already available in-house from previous trials. He thinks that Dr. Nei is completely overreacting and should stop extrapolating his problems at work onto his colleagues. He's being accused of making drug development decisions based on incomplete data.
Bailiffs, please swear in both parties.
The parties have already been sworn in.
Very good. Dr. Nei, you are suing Dr. Liu for making drug development decisions based solely on extrapolated predictions. You are suing for quite a large amount of money. How did you come to that figure?
I took his salary and extrapolated 10 years down the road in the future, used Bayesian Gaussian procedures and really deep learning. I got this figure.
Wow. You must be good friends that you know how much Dr. Liu makes. However, if you're going to sue him for $400K, that might end up ending your relationship.
Angry people make impulsive decisions. Yeah,
Okay.
well, it's too late. We are here.
Okay.
So let's do it.
Okay. Dr. Nei, please present your case.
Thank you, Anna. Dr. Liu and I work for the same pharmaceutical company, Extrapolation X. Recently, Dr. Liu has advocating for making drug development purely based on extrapolated predictions. As one example, slide on, please. Dr. Liu, to his credit, he developed a PK model and exposure response model based on dose ranging study with Formulation X. Beautiful work. But the problem, if you look at this slide, the upper panel, at the early time point, this formulation does not have a good exposure. Next, please. Subsequently, Dr. Liu developed a PK model for Formulation Y. That one have a better absorptions. Then Dr. Liu proceeded to use the exposure ER model for Formulation X and the PK model for Formulation Y to make a prediction, that is extrapolated prediction for Formulation Y for the PD prediction. So he recommended a clinical dose for subsequent studies. I claim that Dr. Liu is always selling the predictions, extrapolated predictions. I want $400K.
I see. Dr. Liu, you are accused of using models to make decisions rather than actual data. What is your response to Dr. Nei's concerns?
Thank you. Yeah, he's right that we developed an ER model for Formulation X and a PK model for Formulation Y to make the PD prediction of a Formulation Y to determine the clinical dose. This kind of prediction are made on a very reasonable assumption that the ER relationship should be the same for both formulations. And this clinical dose prediction is supported by the extrapolation on us understanding of the pharmacology of the compound. In addition, The VPCs were performed for the ER model of Formulation X, as well as the PK model of Formulation Y, confirming the adequacy of the predictions. We make this kind of extrapolated predictions all the time. I'm just doing my job.
Judge Kowalski, we're going off script. What is your ruling?
Okay. I will share my thoughts on the role of extrapolation based on statements published in the statistical and pharmacometrics literature that will help inform my decision. So first, let's talk about, from the statistical literature, what it has to say about empirical models and extrapolation. There's a very good paper by Jerry Hahn in 1977, Hazards of Extrapolation in Regression Analysis. And he states, and I quote, "Extrapolation of a fitted regression equation beyond the range of the given data can lead to seriously biased estimates if the assumed relationship does not hold in the region of extrapolation." He goes on to state, and I quote, "Extrapolation cannot be supported based on statistical grounds alone." So what does the statistical literature have to say about mechanistic models and extrapolation? Well, there's a widely read statistical textbook by Box, Hunter, and Hunter called Statistics for Experimenters, and they have a whole chapter devoted to mechanistic models in that textbook. And they state, and I quote, "Mechanistic models can provide a basis for extrapolation." And they go on to say that a well-tested mechanistic model does more than just graduate the data, it confirms our scientific understanding of the system. This better basis for extrapolation is provided because it is the mechanism, not a mere empirical curve that is being applied, and this mechanism is based on partially verified understanding of the system, very similar to what Dr. Liu has done. However, the mechanism may change, so unchecked extrapolation is never safe. Thus, even a mechanistic model should preferably be used only to suggest regions where further experimentation might be fruitful. And then finally, some words from the pharmacometrics literature, the seminal paper by Louis Scheiner on learning versus confirming in clinical drug development. And he states, and I quote, "Reliable assumptions about the form of the relationship between regimen, prognostic factors, and outcomes are therefore needed to interpolate and extrapolate between and beyond isolated points that are studied, and these can only come from previous scientific knowledge." He goes on to state, and I quote, "Under an enlightened drug development plan, the hypotheses that learning trials generate will be tested in later, more rigorous confirmatory trials." So, before I make my ruling, I have some advice for both the plaintiff and the defendant. For the plaintiff, we must recognize that drug development often requires us to make decisions based on extrapolation throughout the drug development process. For example, we extrapolate from in vitro to animals to healthy volunteers to patients. We extrapolate from single dose to multiple dose. We extrapolate to special populations such as the elderly or pediatric. And finally, we can also extrapolate between formulations such as capsules and tablets. Pharmacometric models leverage our understanding of pharmacology and the disease we are trying to treat. These models can and should inform drug development decision-making even under extrapolation. Now for the defendant. The plaintiff is concerned that you are overselling your predictions. This concerns me that there may be a communication issue. When making extrapolated predictions, explicitly acknowledge that you don't have data to confirm such predictions at the time and that these are hypothesis-generating results rather than confirmatory conclusions. Be an advocate for study designs and collecting trial data that will allow you to confirm these extrapolated predictions. Once data becomes available under the new experimental conditions, perform an external VPC based on the model that provided the extrapolated predictions before updating that model with the new data. Confirming extrapolated predictions on independent data from the new experimental conditions not used in the development of the model will help build trust between pharmacometricians and statisticians, as well as other team members. Will the defendant please rise? I hereby dismiss this case on the grounds of improper foundation for the charges that the defendant promoted the use of extrapolated predictions without empirical evidence to confirm these predictions. Yes, the pharmacometrician performed such predictions, but I am in agreement with the defendant that he was just doing his job. By definition, such extrapolated predictions cannot be confirmed with empirical evidence at the time that they are made. However, the predicted clinical dose would eventually be evaluated in subsequent trials to hopefully confirm its effectiveness and safety, regardless of whether the predictions are confirmed. The concern of overselling the predictions is a subjective assessment that is difficult for me to rule on. I encourage both sides to move to more effectively communicate with each other regarding the value and limitations of such extrapolation. Case dismissed.